Well, hi everyone, it's Marcus and welcome to more Zooming in the Jungle Room. Today I'm very blessed. I'm zooming all the way up to Queensland where I'm speaking to a stage queen. She's the total favorite. She's the absolute icon for me, at least, let alone everyone else. She is, of course, the delightful Carolyn O'Connor. Carolyn, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well, and how are you?
I'm good, thank you, except Queensland looks a little bit warmer than Adelaide today, judging by the window out there.
Queensland is perfect. I
Oh,
have to tell you, well, today in particular, it hasn't been perfect. We've had some hideous weather here, non-stop rain, unbelievable. It's not what you move up to Queensland for, but today is perfection. 24 degrees and lovely sunshine and a breeze, and yeah, I couldn't have asked for a more beautiful place to live, actually. This choice to live here, I'm just going to butt in and let you know, is because my husband was ready sort of for retirement. I'm not ready for retirement, but we were like, where shall we go? Where shall we go that will be the sort of place that we'll end up? And we found this fabulous home here in Noosa, Queensland. So this is where we are.
I'm glad you said you're not ready for retirement because I think there'd be very many disappointed people. So thankfully, hey,
I think sometimes when you've moved to Queensland or you make a decision to come somewhere like this, sometimes people assume that.
yeah,
So you kind of have to say to people, no, I'm still ready and raring to go.
I'm
So,
still here. There's a song there. I should have come up there for the interview. That would have been so much more fun.
would have been
Patio.
fabulous.
I know I had a little cheese board. It would have been great. But anyway, I'm in Adelaide. But you're going to be in Adelaide soon, and we're going to get to that shortly. I'm speaking of retirement, one end of the spectrum, which you're not there yet. Let's go right back to when I very first met you. I'm going to call it, all right? So I went to a fashion parade at the Adelaide Festival Centre. It was George Gross and Harry Hu. And
Oh,
this lady called Carolyn O'Connor came out and did a couple of numbers. I'm like, I don't know her, but she is fabulous. I was like in love. I can't even remember what you were touring at that moment, but do you remember, like, this would have been about 2003, something like that. It was a long time ago.
a
Anyway,
very long time ago. And it would have been, if I was in Adelaide, I've got a feeling that I may have been doing Chicago, but I could be mistaken if that's the date that you're thinking of. But mind you, I became very good friends with George and Harry, God bless. Like they were wonderful. Well, they love the theatre, full stop, but they were such great, fashion designers. And they called me and asked me if I would do like a fashion shoot for them and wear some of their gowns. And then another time they called and said, will you come and perform, at a launch or something they were doing. So we actually became really quite close friends. Whenever I was in Adelaide, we always caught up. We always had dinner. And I was delighted to do that for them because I got to wear the most magnificent clothing. So you must have been a child then when you...
you're very kind, darling. You're very kind.
I was not a child, but I can only imagine that many years ago you must have been very young, but obviously interested in the arts, culture,
I
theatre,
was,
and
yeah,
all.
yeah. That was kind of my emergence, I guess. And what they did at the Adelaide Festival Centre, you'll probably remember this when I tell you, is they actually turned it us about, where so the audience was actually sitting in the backstage, and so you and what other performers were on stage at that time were actually backs to the actual auditorium and
Yes.
worked to the backstage area. It was just so unique and it was really fun. I rushed out straight after that and bought your first CD,
Oh, did you?
which is What I Did for Love. A brilliant,
Yes.
brilliant CD. Now, unfortunately, due to the phase of, moving homes and all that kind of stuff, I've lost that CD and it's not on Spotify, so I don't have access to that anymore. So bring it out on vinyl and I'll buy it.
Do you know what? I had so many in my garage, and I remember saying to people, do people buy CDs anymore? They're like, no, Caroline, they don't. So I was like, okay, they're all going to have to go to the dump. They're all going to have to be thrown away. I did keep some aside, sort of just for, people who were crazy collectors or whatever, which you sound like you might be. And Actually, there is. I think now, if you go into Spotify, you will be able to bring it up. Somebody has put this amazing selection of recordings I've done, and they do that thing called This Is
Yep.
Caroline O'Connor, This
Yep.
Is whoever it is, and they've done that. And
Wow.
I could not believe how many tracks are on there, because not only did I've recorded 2 solo CDs, another one since you received or got that one. And I did Piaf and I did Judy Garland, but also a lot of other recordings in England. Sorry, that's my puppy. It was so, you work so hard to get a CD done, because, musical theatre artists, it always was very difficult to do that, because you normally do a show with a big orchestra, so it's not the same if you do it with just piano, bass and drums. As lovely as it is, it doesn't have the same impact. So I was very fortunate that I was living in England at the time, and a producer called John Yap, who recorded theatre albums at Abbey Road Studios, rang me and said, do you want to do a CD? So imagine, for me, as a little girl growing up in Australia, getting this call to say, do you want to record a CD? It was just phenomenal at the time, and in Abbey Road Studios of all places. And then we did the second album after that called Stage to Screen together, which was wonderful. And so that was a big deal, because we used orchestras, we did it on a large scale. So I'm very proud of those albums. And sometimes I joke now with my friends and say, now people don't use CDs, you can just use them as a coaster. Instead, because they don't buy them. But I used to love it. I don't know about you, but you'd read the sleeves, didn't you? You'd read all the information about, who did the arrangement and who took the pictures and what year was the show. And, all that information fascinated me. So I was very, very lucky to do quite a few recordings over the years. And so I'm very happy that you enjoyed that one.
So is there plans for another one down the track, do you think?
So I worked with a guy quite a bit in Australia. He actually lives in New York now. His name is Daniel Edmonds. He grew up in Canberra, and we worked together a lot in Australia, especially doing cabarets together. He's a magnificent pianist, accompanist, arranger. Of course, he's just been, they've grabbed him in New York because of his extraordinary talent. He's working on Great Gatsby at the moment. He worked on Shark. He's doing brand new pieces. So we worked together for about 13 years. And a couple of years ago, he gave me a blank CD, which is quite funny, actually. And he wrote on it, let's do an album together. And so I've still got that blank sort of CD, that it was just a sort of way of saying, when we get a chance, let's do an album when we're ready. And I would love to, because he's so incredibly talented. So we'll keep you posted about that.
Your fans need it. Let's go back to when you were younger. Was there a pivotal moment in your life growing up that you were like, I need to get into arts and entertainment? Do you remember what that time was?
Just always loved watching the musical movies, and my dad, mother and father, but my dad in particular was a great lover of good singing, good singers, good recordings. And we had, I joke about this, we had the good lounge room, and we had the other lounge, the TV room. And my dad used to go in there, into the good lounge room and listen to wonderful singers. And he'd sit there, with a little Irish whiskey or something, and rather than watch TV. And I remember that was sort of, my ear was attuned to that for a long time. So for many years, even as a young child, and I loved the music that he played, because it was varied. It was classical, it was opera, it was, standards. So I suppose they introduced me to that, but it was, I don't know what happened. It was as though I discovered musicals. And then when they were working, doing shift work, I used to go into the lounge room and I would put a musical album on and I would act out the entire show on my own, literally singing Gypsy or Sound of Music or whatever it was I was listening to, and just learn every word verbatim and just perform for the dog, put the dog there and sing. And so it was just just something that I loved to do as a very young child. And my mother found some cassettes that I had made from about the age of 11, where I'd put this LP on, and then I'd set the cassette player and I'd listen to myself singing with the singer to see if I could hold the note as long or if I could sound like them. So it was just there, you know, it was a passion. And I think a lot of people go through that, where they discover it as a young child, and it's almost like a calling, I suppose. So I didn't know it would be a profession at the time, but, you know, there you go. I think it was just my destiny.
So during that time, what artist was really inspiring you? Was there somebody that you were connecting with?
Oh, Ethel Merman, for sure. You know, like I remember hearing Gypsy. That was one of the albums that we had, because it didn't have a lot. But I remember hearing her singing, like, you know, here she is, boys. Here she is, world. Here's Rose. And I was like, oh my God, this is electric. This is unbelievable. That sound, that big belt, and I was obsessed with her. That wasn't a very good version, actually, because I didn't want to scream too loud in the lounge. I've got a very echoey house, but I was obsessed with that sound of the voice, you know, that really strong, belty. I was like, wow, what is that? And I didn't know what Broadway was. I thought Broadway was a thing rather than a place. Well, it's a Broadway sound, or it's a Broadway, you know, I didn't understand. To me, that was Broadway. When I heard her sing songs from musicals, I thought that must be what Broadway is. And so I have to say she had a big impact on me, as she did the world. And she also got to do some great shows. So the recordings and the standard of the writing of the composer and the lyricist, etc., was so good. You know, Stephen Sondheim and, you know, all of those people that were involved in those shows that she did. So that was my first kind of inspiration. And then many, many, many years later, I auditioned for a movie called DeLovely, with Kevin Kline, and I ended up playing Ethel Merman in that movie, which I think is just so ridiculous, strange, right?
And was that, I mean, that movie, I mean, that had Robbie Williams, it had Alanis Morissette, just iconic. I love that. Before or after Moulin Rouge? I can't remember.
I think that was before.
Okay.
I think it was before. I'm saying that because I don't remember getting a call about it or anything because of Moulin Rouge. I mean, a lot of stuff happened to me after Moulin Rouge because it was such a big thing, you know, when the movie came out. And also as a singer dancer, you know, a lot of wonderful things happened because of that too. Chicago primarily. You know, I got Moulin Rouge while I was doing Chicago in Australia. I got the job. And then, of course, because I did Moulin Rouge, I got the call to say, do you want to come and do Chicago on Broadway? So it kind of, my life kind of, you know, changed. It had already changed in England prior to that when I started doing like lead roles. And then once Chicago and Moulin happened, it changed again. You know, my career became more, you know, more associated with America and Australia. So just fortuitous, I think. I mean, I do believe in fate. I do. I mean, because I know you can't plan a theatre career. You can't, because you don't know what anyone's going to produce and you don't know what they're going to write. So I just sort of often leave it in the lap of the gods and just put it out there and say, look, I'm ready. I'm ready when you're ready. Whatever you're going to throw my way, let's go.
Totally into that. Now, 3 Helpman Awards, 1 for End of the Rainbow, 1 for Piaf, 1 for Anything Goes. Which one were you most proud of at the time, do you feel?
It's funny with awards. Because I don't even think I've been there to accept any of those at the time. Isn't that terrible? I don't think I've been there to receive the award. I've been either away working or, you know, probably overseas. I'd say all of them. So which ones was it? End of the Rainbow.
The Rainbow, Piaf, and Anything Goes.
Oh, gosh, that's really hard because I loved them all. I love them all. I'd say, you know, End of the Rainbow, because it was a brand new creation, very proud of that. Because, you know, that show was first done in Australia, you know, before it went to Broadway. It was created here with the wonderful Wayne Harrison as director. And I always loved Judy Garland. I was terrified of doing it because she's so, so beloved and a legend, and you don't want comparisons. And at the same time, though, I just don't want people to forget her or to know how brilliant she was. So you've got to keep her spirit alive and for people to recognize, like, wow, like, back in the day, that sort of standard of singing, and it was a great story because there's also a lot of tragedy as well, unfortunately. So I was very proud of that. I was disappointed I didn't get to do it on Broadway, but there you go, that happens. I loved Anything Goes because I loved working with Dean Bryant and Andrew Holsworth and my leading man, Alex Rathgaber, who I adore. It was, and also to get to tap again. I think I'd only at that stage tapped. I tapped as a child, but I only tapped in Me and My Girl in 1984. So that was the last time I tapped. And then Anything Goes was like, I don't know how many decades later, but I had to blow the dust off the tap shoes and get them out, And so that was a joy to get to tap dance again, and to do that magnificent production for John Frost. And also, but Piaf, you see, I love too because I had to learn to sing in French, and I don't speak French. So it was the challenge of that I really loved, was just like, well, here we go, dearie. Let's just see if I can do this. I look back in hindsight and I go, what were you thinking? You're absolutely crazy to think. I had to learn 11 songs, in French, some in English, but it was her life, from the very young age and to the very end. And it was, so I'm torn. I actually have to say, I love so many shows that I've done. There's only been a couple, which I won't mention, that I didn't particularly enjoy that much, but really, I've been very fortunate I think it comes down to also knowing what you're right for, not taking on something just because you think you should. I think you've got to think about whether you can do a good job with that role or not. Yeah. So, yeah. But thanks for asking. I don't think I gave you an answer, though.
It's like, I mean, I ask that question quite often to various artists, and, it is, quite often the response is it's like trying to choose your favorite child, because, there's a certain amount of love in obviously everything you do, clearly.
Oh, look, I was really disappointed I didn't get a nomination for Gypsy. I was disappointed because I think it was in Melbourne, and the Green Room. I was disappointed because I knew it was a great show. Not just me, but I also thought it was one of the best things that I'd ever done. And that the production itself was magnificent. Everybody in it, Gail Edwards she directed it so brilliantly. And so I was like, oh, that's, I was just because, but it really doesn't matter that much. I mean, it's wonderful to be nominated. It's wonderful to win, but it's also wonderful to get the call to work, to get a call to say, do you want to do a show?
So, Caroline, what do you think your most challenging role has been thus far? On top of it.
Wow. I think I've had a lot of challenges over the years, to be honest, but certainly learning French for Piaf was a really big one. Gosh, I'm just trying to think. I think they're meant to be challenging. So I always look at the sort of difficulties as sort of being positive, because if you can see something that seems like almost an impossibility and then grasp it and then take on the challenge and then, follow through. For instance, if I had to choose one, it would have to be a play I did called Bombshells. And that was written by Joanna Murray Smith, and it was written for me, and it was directed by the wonderful, magnificent Simon Phillips. And we did it with the Melbourne Theatre Company. And I played 6 characters from the ages of 15 to 57. And it was a 2-hour, one-woman experience and a play primarily, although I did sing and do a little dancing in it. So there were 6 very different women going through different sort of bombshell episodes in their lives. And to learn that was a ridiculous amount of dialogue. Imagine talking for 2 hours nonstop, but also with accents. There was an English, an Irish, an American, Australian, all very different physically. I'm so grateful that they gave me something like that to do, because it has to be one of the most difficult things for someone to pull off. And I loved every minute of it, although I thought it was going to kill me. I think I only weighed about 47 kilos by the time I finished. And I looked like a small child. But we did Melbourne, we did Sydney, we did Adelaide, we did the Edinburgh Festival, we did London, the West End. I got nominated for an Olivier Award, so for that, and also for Mac and Mabel. So that to me probably was the biggest challenge ever. And in hindsight, see, it's a long time since I've talked about it. I'm just getting all these warm, sort of bubbly feelings just talking about it, because sometimes I'd cry with him in rehearsal. Sometimes I'd throw a strop and say, I can't do it. I can't do it. It was very dramatic. I wish they'd filmed the whole rehearsal period. And then sometimes just joyous laughter and hilarity. But in hindsight, my God, what an absolute blessing. And I think it's that thing of creating something from scratch that you create, and then years from now, other people will get to play. That's the biggest highlight. So yes, I'm glad you reminded me of that, because I'd have to say that was the most challenging and probably the most gratifying.
Now, as far as actors go or singers go, is there someone in Australia that you'd really love to collaborate with?
Tricky. I've been lucky to work with a lot of amazing people in Australia, and not just performers, but like playwrights, like David Williamson I worked with. We did Scarlett O'Hara at the Crimson Parrot together. Gail Edwards, I mentioned earlier, who's an amazing director, Dean Bryant, Andrew Halsworth, a wonderful young choreographer I work with on the rink in London. Actually, his name is Fabian Alois. He's just choreographed Sunset Boulevard, that's been on the West End and it's gone to Broadway. So I look back and go, wow, I've worked with some absolutely incredible people over the years, and overseas, choreographers and directors. Look, I don't know. I suppose it would depend on if they wanted to work with me. It has to be a collaboration, doesn't it? You could want to work with someone, but they'll be like, no, I don't think so. Oh, look, no one's sort of jumping out at me, because look, I got to work with Baz Luhrmann, like that was just something else. That was an amazing injection of just incredible inspiration of what he does. It's kind of mind-blowing and life altering working with him. So I don't know. I really don't. I mean, maybe another director who would be willing to maybe bring something out of me that I haven't done before, maybe more of a tragedy type performance or something that I've never been able to get my teeth into. So we just put that out there. Maybe something will come back. So like I said, put it out there and just see what happens.
Absolutely, Caroline. Now, I'm excited because I haven't seen you in Adelaide myself since 9 to 5, which was a good couple of years ago now. Of course, it had Casey Donovan, it had Marina Pryor, it had Eddie Perfect. What a cast. It was huge. Even Dolly Parton herself made an appearance. And well,
did.
in the flesh, but on the screen, good enough.
Exactly.
But that was a hoot and a holler. I'm sure you had a great time. But excitedly, you are coming back to Adelaide for another show now, which I cannot wait for. It's getting huge hype. It is called Candide. It is running from the 23rd to the 25th of May, 2024, which is only, about 3 weeks away. Today it's 1st of May, 3 weeks away. It is by the State Theatre Company of South Australia, and of course, State Opera. The first time they've worked together for a very long time. So this is going to be huge. You are, of course, in it. Please tell us about Candide.
Oh, look, I think this is an incredible collaboration that Mitchell Butel has come up with here, who's directing the show and also the artistic director, obviously, of the State Theatre Company. And also he's playing one of the major characters, Pangloss, which is going to be a delight for audiences to see him on stage. Mitchell and I actually did Piaf together. So we've known each other since 2000. In fact, we did Man of La Mancha together, which I think might have even been before then. But anyway, I digress. Candide is... oh, look, it's one of those. I remember watching a video of Candide from years ago and thinking, why does this never get done? And I think the reason is because, I mean, it is a complicated piece. It's Voltaire, you know, it's an unusual work, but it's a big production. And I think that might be why, because you have to have a big orchestra, like a symphony orchestra. You have to have a huge cast. You have to have a huge choir as well, a choral choir, to pull off this Leonard Bernstein music and, well, the score and the lyrics. You can't do it any other way. It has to be done en masse like this to get the full impact of the show. And having been a Leonard Bernstein fan my entire life, because I've done West Side Story, and you know, it's such a delight and an incredible gift to get to do this show that is very rarely done. And that's why I'm glad you mentioned that it's only like 4 performances, because if people don't see this now, they're not going to see it again for a very, very long time, certainly not on this scale. And with people like Alex Lewis playing Candide, whose voice is just delicious, and Annie Aiken singing Glitter and Be Gay is just something to behold. Of course, we've got fabulous Matt Gilbertson, better known as Hans, in the cast as well, who's playing the Baron, and I'm playing the old lady, which is slightly offensive, slightly offensive.
They're going to put on a lot of age makeup.
Not really, because, you know, in some respects, she kind of reminds me of me. I can never sort of tell how old I am, you know, until I realize, I look at the diary and go, oh my God, am I like, I'm 61 now. Yeah. And I just don't feel it. But she's a bit like me. She's quite feisty. She's got a lot of vim, va-va-voom kind of character. She tells you all about her past and all the things she's been through, but she's very flirty and energetic. And oh, look, I did the show with Mitchell 5 years ago at the Opera House, and I was terrified because it has this incredible reputation, and you just don't want to, you know, let people down. And of course, it's an opera stroke operetta, but with a lot of humor, a lot of fun. But still, it is regarded as an operatic piece. So I was very nervous because I don't normally do this sort of thing. But once I read the script and I heard the songs, I thought, oh, I get it. Now I know why I'm here for a bit of comedy and a bit of, you know, a bit of swagger. It's actually quite beautiful. It's slightly complicated, but it's pretty much a story about optimism and a lesson kind of in optimism, to be honest with you. You know, it's very philosophical. It's he's talking about I've been doing a bit of research myself recently, actually, even more so, because I do love research when I'm doing a piece. Yeah. They sort of talk about the failings of society and you know, maybe perhaps sort of being a little bit more positive, a bit more helpful with people. The characters within it, all of the characters in the piece, they all change during the evening because of all their experiences that they talk about during the evening. And I've written a few notes here about, it had 4 different titles, this show, and the titles were, it was called Candide. It was also called All for the Best. It was also called The Optimist, and it was also called The Age of Enlightenment. And I think that's quite delightful, because I think that gives you a really good insight into what the show is about. It's about you know, sort of being helpful and sort of it's about how people fail in society as well. You know, and he does sort of criticize religion, for instance, which I hope people won't be offended by, but it's just his opinion. So it's a fascinating piece. Everyone seems quite naive at the beginning of the play, and by the end, they've certainly grown, you know, an enormous amount because of meeting other people and talking about their experiences and coming together to help each other on this incredible journey. So, yeah, it's, I don't know if you can tell by the way I'm talking, but I'm very excited about it, and I like it because it's like a story about morals,
Yeah.
you know, about
That.
people, like now morals are just like, there's so much, you know, there's so much criticism, and there's so much, you go online and you see all this and you think, why can't people just be nice to each other? Why can't they be more helpful? Or, you know, just be positive rather than negative. And
Rise
I
up
think
and
that
spread a bit more kindness, right?
bit more love, a bit more kind, you know, kindness costs nothing. And just, you know, you, as they, you know, that old cliche, I shouldn't say it's cliche because it's the truth. You never know what someone's going through.
Yeah.
And, you know, unless you stop and listen and sort of help them out, then, you know, you'll feel better yourself when you do. So it's an incredible journey, this piece. The music, I mean, I can't go on about the music enough.
You're getting me
People are going
excited.
to have goosebumps, absolute goosebumps when you hear it. And there's a song at the end and it's called Make Our Garden Grow. And I still to this day can't get through a rehearsal without crying my eyes out because it's just so beautiful. You know, it's about cultivating your garden, as they say. You know, if you want to have a beautiful garden, then you got to take care of
Yes,
it.
darling.
And
These
you've
last
got
couple
one right there.
I know they're
Yeah.
hard work. I'm a high maintenance kind of guy. What can I say? Hey,
No,
now
listen,
I don't know if many people
you're
knew.
definitely cultivating your garden.
Ah, yay. Hey, I don't know if many people knew this, but you did live in Adelaide for a small burst of time when you were younger. And of course, you have come over to Adelaide a plethora of times for shows, and visit family and friends, I'm sure. But my point is, when you come to Adelaide this time around, is there a place that you're really looking forward to visiting in maybe, you know, a bit of time off, like go out for a coffee or a bite to eat somewhere? Where's your favorite hangout when you get to Adelaide?
I don't really have a favorite hangout. I've been to some, oh gosh, there's some beautiful restaurants there. Beautiful restaurants, bars and cafes. I am actually being taken out when I arrive. I'm being taken to the Jolly Boat House when I get there.
It's gorgeous.
And I haven't been there for years. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm going to go with Mitchell and Matt, stroke Hans, and some other lovely guests when I arrive in Adelaide. So that'll be the first place I go to. But if you have any suggestions of where I should go, then I will definitely, you know, take your advice.
Well, honey, I reckon I'll take you out for a coffee and we'll have a good old chinwag. I'm sure we've got much to talk about,
That
including
sounds
interior design, darling, because I'm in love with your home.
Oh,
Now,
thank you.
My pleasure. So, like we said, we've been speaking to Caroline O'Connor. She is in Candide, which runs from the 23rd to the 25th of May, 2024, which is only 3 weeks away at Her Majesty's Theatre. So I wish you all the best for an incredible show. I'm going to be coming along to see it. I can't wait.
Oh, that's great.
If you find one of those CDs in the shed, bring it on down, honey. All right.
I might bring all four for you.
Oh, please do, please do.
And that's definitely a set of posters.
I know. I was just going to say they won't end up as a coaster. I promise. I've got my own coaster.
Are you sure?
I'm sure, darling. Caroline, you are an absolute delight. Like I said a little bit earlier, it's like chatting to an old friend. You are just a beautiful soul, and I love your joy. And thank you for everything you do for arts and entertainment.
Oh, that means the world. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this chat, and I'll catch up with you for coffee in Adelaide.
Yay. Bye, honey.
Yay. Thanks, darling. Thank you. Thank you.